I'm gonna tell y'all the same thing Sonny Lance Lamb been trying to tell you for years. Be careful how you vote. Be careful how you vote. Yes, I'm warning you people. Be careful how you vote. Be so careful. But when you go to that voting booth, Lord, be sure they don't cut your throat. The alderman say one thing, the president say the same. If I don't know how much money you got, can you play that game? I'm warning you people. Please be careful how you vote. Yeah, the one they say gonna do something for you. They will know if you got to vote. Can you vote for them? Take a good time, man. Be careful how you vote. I'm warning you. Be careful how you vote. The ones say they're gonna do so much for you. Lord, they don't want to cut your throat. I tell you how I feel. Same. Yes, I'm warning you. All up to the president, they the same. They want to know if you can help them make some money. Lord, your life never changed. Now, unless you go for, you know what I mean? Piano, brother. Some say they help the poor. Yeah, some say they help the blind. Some say they help the poor. Yeah. Yeah, when you look at that paycheck, though, you see they done withdrew more, though. Alderman say one thing. President say the same. I want you to get in the booth, child, and write in my name. Hey. Be careful how you vote. They're the one you think you can trust. Y'all ain't the one that cut your vote. Hey.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? I'm serious, and I think there's no other way to start this show. I guess the resurgence of the Jack Dappa Blues radio show with such a song that still is relevant today. We're going to speak about that song, but more importantly, we're going to speak with and get the story of our legendary guest today. This gentleman, I don't even know where to begin, from Afro-Cuban dance to an author to a blues musician, historian. There's just so many things going on. Please, let's give a round of applause to Chicago Beau, Mr. L.T. Beauchamp. What's happening, sir?
I'm well, sir. How are you? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. I'm blown away. you have so many historical achievements under your belt. I don't even know where to begin. I guess just for the sake of the terrain we're in right now, I'd venture to ask you, did you think when you recorded this, and please share with us when you recorded this, that we would still be facing the same thing today?
Well, my thoughts on that are that situation I always figured would not ever go away. I mean, I recorded that in 1991, and on an album that was actually called My Ancestors originally, and because I tried to tie things together. I mean, voting rights, what you get out of it. And I'm one of the people in the part of our culture where everything falls back to the ancestors. So I think it's a message for all times, that we've been, disconnected from the continent, and just being careful how you vote is now we finally have the opportunity is very important, and that my version of it is actually a takeoff of Honeyland Slim's version. It's a bit different, but I was inspired by the fact that he was so into similar thinking. We have to really be careful how you vote, because think about it. In the last 100 years, you really have to be careful.
Yes, definitely.
You have to be very careful the next month.
You said the name of the album that this cut is from is called My Ancestors. You also made it very clear that the ancestors and our traditional music and heritage and culture are together, right? So break down that school of thought for those who don't understand, because there's a lot of enthusiasts and fans who love the music, but somewhat, or not even somewhat, blatantly separated from the experience of the people.
Well, I think that the blues, probably more than any other of our art forms in the Black diaspora, we haven't controlled the narrative. I once wrote something for the DuSable Museum about the dis-Africanization of African Americans, and basically, by being dis-Africanized, because of the way we were enslaved, we lost touch. If you lose touch with something for a long period of time, you're basically in, use the cliche, no man's land or no person's land. Okay, and I think when we emerged from slavery, from physical bondage, we were in no person's land. I mean, nothing you can really put your finger on and say this is mine. Whereas, let's say, for example, in Haiti, you had a strong revolutionary leader like McCandle. Sort of equivalent may have been Nat Turner. And no matter what the French did, and they did some terrible, awful stuff, the people still were not totally disconnected from their African roots. And so the blues, even though it may be subconscious, maybe they don't think about it. Guys don't think about it. Maybe some of the songs every now and then, Hoodoo Man and whatnot, loosely connected to ancient rites and rituals. So I think that's, for me, it was important to make the blues album that tried to reconnect. And I got people talk to me quite a bit about that. On that same album. I did a poem called Shy Griot Chanson, the Chicago Beau song. And I had African Columbus in there. The so-called blues critics didn't know, well, this isn't blues. No, it is.
Mm.
You know, we're going to the building box, and I had a South African drummer on the section, as well as blues artists like Shirley Johnson, Jimmy Dawkins, and jazz artist E. Parker McDougal on the saxophone, and then the poem overlapping that.
Wow.
So you know, the aficionados, and they are self-appointed, of course. Well, we don't know. And I got the same kind of flack when I came to 1994 blues. I know when I had a dedication to Nelson Mandela.
Mm.
Well, I got confronted about that as he just got out of jail. Well, what's it got to do with the blues? I said everything. Everything you can think of has got to do with that man spending 27 years in jail.
So now you make you raise a very interesting point that you got slack for connecting the culture, heritage, and music or tribalism of the blues to Africa. Where did this slack come from?
Oh, it came from music critics, right in Chicago, different writers. They weren't black.
Mm.
I call them scribblers, you know, because they, I mean, really, because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of generation of blues artists who came up with this great migration, people, you know, I'm not going to fault them. That wasn't their role. I mean, there were generations where people have been isolated for 300 years. So
right.
you don't come off of a plantation and, you know, and start writing in history. So that's another area where our lack of education in a certain sense and probably a certain degree of fear, you know, was exploited by, you know, blues societies. Not saying all of them, but those, you know, who were able to, you know, have a narrative that wasn't sanctioned by us, you know.
I definitely understand that, and I'm happy. I applaud, and I'm really happy you worded it that way. Was not sanctioned by us, the blues people. So, with that being said, let's get into your story before we get into your activism and your being an educator of our tradition. Were you born and raised in Chicago? How were you introduced to the blues? How did your whole journey start?
Well, I think it was probably pretty typical. I was born in 1949. I was born in I don't sound like a song, but we were living in a tenement, one room. I had an older sister, 3.5 years older than me. And I remember we were all in that one room, in a rooming house, you know, basically. And the lady's name was Miss Earl at that Atlanta place. And she always had buckets going on downstairs. It was a common kitchen. And it was a common living room. So, I mean, the little records, you know, like, oh, my goodness, Erskine Hawkins, you know, people like that. A lot of jazz people, man, Louis Armstrong. Mm. So the music was always around. My family, per se, you know, like my mother and father, they weren't, they loved the music, but they weren't into it like I became. You know? So, as a child, I just had a real love for the music. My father, this is digress because I think it's pertinent. My father was a lawyer. Mm. And my father was born in 1903. In East Texas, a little place called Rusk. And, you know, sometimes in families, you just have one person who just sort of sees things differently. You know, I mean, there was hard times. There were sharecroppers.
Okay.
But my father, you know, just walked off the farm one day when he was about 17 and he hitchhiked to San Antonio, Texas. And he met a lady down there, and we had some relatives in Mexico who were runaway slaves because that was one of the tributaries of the Underground Railroad into Mexico. And he found some of them and similar in Merida and other places. And that's saw a lot of good stories there. But he was just that kind of person. Meanwhile, the rest of them in the family, they just did what people did down there. They actually asked him, what you here for, you know, or, you need your help here. But so I was lucky to have him. You know, he was an adventurer. He traveled all over the place. He ended up in Chicago. And in 1932, he became the first African American to graduate from John Marshall Law School, Chicago.
Wow!
Now that was during the Depression, and you know he had nothing to lose. And he was telling me, he said, "Well, you know, his white colleagues in school, they had everything to lose. They were all worried to death." He said, "This is what real freedom is. I was free to make it, free to break it. Didn't make no difference." You know?
I hear that.
You know what I'm saying? So it was that aspect of his personality that really inspired me artistically. Even though I don't know if that was his intention or not, but it certainly did, that freedom that he had. So I just always gravitated towards music, especially blues music, because it represented freedom. And his office for years was on the corner of 47th and South Park, which is now called King Drive in Chicago, right up next to the Regal Theater, which of course was the home of all kind of music to stand and every single night. You catch the blues act, you catch the rhythm and blues act, you catch the marvelettes, you catch the Hands Down. You know,
wow.
you catch the dippers, the platters. You know, it was all happening right next to you. It was rubbing on against the walls where we were. So I was always close to music, and he had so much rhythm in his law practice. It was like a musical instrument. You know?
Wow.
And he had Raphael Reed was one of the finest men, Ahmad Jamal, for many, many years. So, you know, so that was the environment that he provided. He was a survivor.
Now, but that's very historical now. The first, and we know the history of Chicago, and just on this is not even a surface level, so I guess I should reword that. But the fact that one of the, I would say one of the things spoken about often when it comes to MLK, that most people didn't know the level or degree of racism in Chicago until he went there. So we were speaking of one of the heavy ground zeros of the migration, and your father was able to become the first, you know, because we don't have a lot of firsts, right? He was the first. I think that's a big feat. Let me ask you this before we get a little bit too into your story, that I can't get this question in. Your last name, is it Creole? Is it French? What is the? I gotta ask.
Well, I'll give you my opinion about it. Beauchamp is it's French. It's pretty popular in Louisiana. It's extremely popular in Quebec. And Rusk, Texas, where my dad was from, was not too far from the Louisiana line. So I asked him, of course, I said, well, how did it get to be Beauchamp, given the fact that, you know, DNA tests have shown that we rarely know anything about our great-grandparents. You know, as I is. So, don't let me forget, I have a theory on that too.
Definitely.
So he said that his grandfather's name was Tipton Beauchamp. That was by blood. But he said to me, he said, you know how people remarry and they take on the name of the new partner, you know. So he said he went back and got the name of his biological grandfather, which was Tipton Beauchamp. Now, if I asked his brothers and sisters, and they said, well, that's what he said, but we don't know that story. Now, they're all down there. You got to imagine they're all down on the farm, right? So he told me, so they would be too young to know anyway, and they probably weren't that interested. So I went back to records and stuff like that, and it was Beauchamp. You know, and he always had that name. Now, he could have, changed it, but he said to me, and I understand, he said, well, what the hell? Beauchamp, Wilson, Thompson, McPherson, ain't none of that us anyway.
I hear you.
We can't trace it. Every now and then, it's kind of interesting. You have some strange black person to tell you, me and the Clintocks go back 200 years or something. But, okay. But, at some point, we all know the reality of how we got our names. So some of us named themselves, families, took the names of plantations of the town,
Right.
They were from, like my father's older brother, he called himself Dale Henderson because of Henderson County, Texas, So, but because when you think about it, man, the slave trading, in the Caribbean, who knows? We don't know anything. That's the interesting part. Is a total disconnect, man. We don't know anything.
Right. And, it's beyond unfortunate, and it also, from time to time, not knowing for a group of people, they get so upset or frustrated, they just don't want to know, and they just go on and take on whatever new life that seems fit. But I think we should work to reconnect. And in reconnecting, I have to ask you about this because, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is an amazing gentleman because, one of the first things I wanted to do as a kid, and I used to get, my mother's old school. She was born in Chicago, my mother and my uncle. And then my from Mississippi, Chicago, then they went to New York. So she was old school. She used to fire my legs up because every year when she bought me my Easter shoes, I would put Vaseline on them to make it shiny, and then I would go in the kitchen because I was the best floor in the apartment, and I gets to tapping. Well, I thought I was tapping. I was making noise because So when I saw that, in your early years, this is like phenomenal. Yeah, you don't meet many people anymore, that took part in this part of our tradition. Please talk to us about tap dancing and what attracted you to that.
Well, my mom. I think parents do this when they want. Kids to have some activities, and my older sister, she wanted to be a ballet dancer. So I was going to take ballet lessons. Maybe she was 8, 9 years old, so I was, 6, like that, 7. And because I had, with the stick of the class, I had to tag along, and I was there. So in this place called the Fine Arts Building in Chicago, where all kind of artistic classes going on there. Where she was taking her classes, and I wanted to be a drummer. So my mother and father said, "There's no way in the world you would have the drums in an apartment." And banging around, it probably didn't need favor, but then there was a tap dancing studio right next to the ballet studio. So I said, "Well, can I do that then? So can I tap?" And so she said, "Yeah, you can." And so I started tap dancing, and then there was a very famous guy named Jimmy Payne. He was a choreographer, well known in Chicago. He was from Panama, I believe, and in fact, his son teaches tap in Chicago today. One of his sons, Jimmy Payne Jr. And my sister also became interested in doing Afro-Cuban dance.
Wow.
Jimmy Payne became our teacher. So my sister was doing ballet and Afro-Cuban. I was doing tap. And we started having shows, and we started learning the old soft shoe and all these different routines, man. And it just became just fun. So when I was much younger, of course, when I started gigging professionally, as a musician, I would like to do that just for a second, just for a second. Just have a band, take a little something, from St. Louis Blues or something, do some shuffle hop flaps real quick. I can't do it now, man. My knees just collapse.
I hear that.
But tap, it's a big part of dance is a big part of our thing. All kinds of dance, right? Dance for Black people is ritualistic.
Yes, it is.
White people, depending on their culture, and I'd have to say this, Eurocentric culture, dance is often recognition through the minuet. Let's pop this thing and very formal. But I think you find most native peoples throughout the world are very spontaneous and dance reacts what's going on in their life and their world. They dance because the harvest is good. They dance to make the harvest better. They dance because they're in love. They dance because they're in touch with their body. It's a very, very different culture.
It is.
And feel good.
Right. Because I think it was in Leroy Jones's book that it was singing, dance, and these things were part of daily life, from spiritual to work to everything that had to do with the Black person, the Black folk life. Now, there's so many different areas we can go with your story, because you're a journalist. You actually remind me of, and I shouldn't say this only because I don't want to say I'm not the biggest W.E.B. Du Bois fan. I honor him a lot, but I'm slightly more on the Booker T side of things later in life. Mm-hmm. Understanding things I didn't understand as a younger man. However, the great side of Du Bois is what you remind me of, because you're a very cultured man. I don't know if we have the time to discuss the many places that you introduced the blues to, right? So I guess what I would like to ask you, how do we go from tap dancing to a prominent Chicago blues figure and then going around the world and educating them about our traditional music?
Well, by the age of 14, I was pretty committed that I wanted to be, a blues singer. Now, as I said, my dad is always on 47th, it's now called King Drive, 47 King Drive. I've been down this street, a little blues clubs. I used to hear blues music being played. I heard jazz in the Sutherland Hotel had a lounge. And it was very safe to come home from school, drop your books off, and just walking down the street. So you go by Lounge, the Palm Cabinet, for example, you hear bands in that 408 club. So maybe I just have to get the travel away. I forget those numbers about pulling up around 47th Street. But so I had pretty much decided that. And kind of simultaneously, man, I was wrestling with the idea of segregation in the minds of people. It's like being told what neighborhood you can live in. In other words, so you remain free, to me, if you don't really imagine yourself outside of certain boundaries. So you have a mindset that says, well, you know, the black community. And then you have another mindset that goes, well, isn't that something you should decide yourself, you know, about your community? We're here because this is what we were assigned to be.
Right. That's a different.
We
Yeah.
were put here. So I mean, should you feel, you know, anything about being there? Well, I didn't. I never did. So,
Wow.
tell you the truth, this may sound crazy, man. But I was realized that a black man wrote The Three Musketeers of the Count of Monte Cristo. Alexander Dumas. So I saw a picture of them. I said, yeah, this brother here, he's getting down like the Count of Monte Cristo. And I realized at a very early age that the plight of the Count of Monte Cristo, being in jail, even though they depicted him as a white man, was really a story about the woes of black people. That's one element. Next element, okay, every young man, you know, thinks of himself as virile and stuff, right?
Right.
So I used to turn on the TV and watch James Bond movies. I said, well, damn, this guy's all over the world with the ladies. I know I can do that exactly as he is. That's exactly, I'm just giving it to you for exactly what I think. Then I was always interested in how the white mind works, because I've always figured we weren't getting the real deal. You know, we know how the white mind dominates people, but how does it work within themselves? So I read a lot of books. I mean, besides reading, you know, black books and James Baldwin and all that. In fact, James Baldwin got me kicked out of school, thank God. I started reading June and Freud and Frido Dostoevsky and Herman Hesse, you know, and I was at that age in the 60s, like 19, 18 or so, where, you know, I knew all kinds of people culturally. So I just decided, man, right around 18, I got to hit the road to satisfy myself, to know what's going on in this world, because you ain't going to find out sitting here on the couch watching TV.
Right.
So, and these folks are going to keep you, in those days in Chicago, living in projects, you know, they're going to keep you marginalized.
Right.
So you have to step out of that. You have to step out of that. And so that's, you know, my music was my way to go, if you will, you know, to try to make a living here and there. But I also realized that when you can do a lot of things you can't do when you're older. So I figured as a young man, let me go, you know, and first get to know some blues artists, older guys really well, which I did. Muddy Waters, I do quite well. Memphis Slim was a mentor. When I got to Paris, Memphis Slim took me by the arm and said, sit down, boy, let me tell you something. And he gave me the whole rundown about what it would be like, you know, to live in Europe, to live in France. There were so many other guys living there. William Maybon, that tune I don't know. He lived there. And Johnny Griffin, the sax player, he lived there. So there was a whole black community. James Baldwin was there. The great poet Hartley Roy Beals was there. I mean, it was all kinds of people there, man. Bill Swing Baker in her last years was living there. I got there in '69. So now something happened. I'm not saying Europe is any less racist. They're the parents in racism, but the cultural appreciation is what made people stay longer, and prove the point that being disconnected from the United States is in fact reconnecting to yourself.
Wow!
Because you don't have the burden of having to look over your shoulder all day long. You're not burdened with people calling you the N-word. You don't have those burdens. You're burdened with being a black lady who can dance, you know, a black man who can sing. Some of the great black actors, man, were living in Paris. You know, this show was on TV called it was called The Wire on HBO.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, that series. Okay, the guy Clark Pierce, who was the star of that, he was living in Paris. He had been in the Paris version of Hair.
Wow.
So you had a lot of very interesting people. So you had a kind of a cultural mecca going on. Yeah, and I'm in Kansas City right now for some family reasons, man. And they don't get it. I mean, my brothers and sisters here don't get it. They cannot imagine themselves beyond the boundaries that have been set. It was the same thing in Chicago. People would take the L train past a certain stop, and they would be, y'all went all the way up there? Or the police would take me and my friend Julio, who's Billy Boy Arnold, one of his brothers, they take us off the train. Why are you all up here? Well, I said, we're going to see somebody. They call the people up and say, some black folks coming to go see.
Wow. Wow.
Other transportation, man. So a person of color, a black person, a woman, whoever just thinks and realizes that they're confined, you have to imagine yourself out of this trap that's been set for you. And go do your thing. Because it's I call it the post-slavery trap.
Wow.
You don't see yourself in another situation. And they got all kinds of weapons working against you. And most people don't see them. I mean, they don't, and I don't want to offend your listeners or anybody, but just ask yourself this question. Just ask yourself this.
Okay.
Now, say you've been 5 generations a slave. You're a woman, let's say. Half of your kids were taken away from you right after they were birth. You ain't sure who the daddies are of some of your kids. And your kids ain't sure. Okay, so psychologically, this is very, 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 very damaging. There was no people on a plantation to try to, coaches still would help you with your psychological problems. Oh, the way it'll be okay. Let's sit down, have a little therapy session tomorrow. You're nothing. You're an animal. That's how we do it. So you come out of this state of being an animal. And you think of how much disgust you have for everything this person's done to you, except one thing.
Which is?
Their religion.
Except for religion?
Yes. Everything they've done, everything imaginable. I mean, the atrocities is just unspeakable. But you still come out of 300 years of bondage talking about Jesus. I have nothing against fundamentally, philosophically, okay, anything that's about being good and benevolent and treating your fellow human being right. But of all the things that this person has done to you, you still come out of that with holding on to that. That always amazed me. I mean, somebody beating you, raping your kids, and telling you that particular God works it that way. So how can you disbelieve everything they say to you except that without any research?
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know if I don't know, right? Because it's a little weird because just reading the description of Jesus and where all these places or all these happenings in the Bible took place is, hard for me not to think that he's a black man. So, I don't know, because I have to wonder. Because when you mentioned that, I thought about a lot of things that I hear where it would be like, well, do you know they named the slave ship Jesus and this, that, and the third, and then in the same breath, I get to thinking about the treatment, right? So one of the things they did was burn a cross on black people's property, right? So I would have to believe that if anybody, they knew how Jesus looked. That's why they were, mocking him and his people. That's just me. I don't know.
Well, it's such a tough one, man, because, I've just been investigating in my life. I said, okay, so they're making this story that's that we've been told. Here's a story that when I look at Europe, where the story has been told the most, outside of missionaries, I look at, I say, Jesus, look what these folks are doing to each other. I mean, going back, even now, if you want to count some of the wars going on in the former Soviet Union, it's a non-stop fighting for 2,000 years. Non-stop. 150, 200 years after Jesus was dead, maybe 300, Constantine was waging war. But I managed to maneuver, I think, to manipulate the leadership, the loyalty of people into some kind of collective thing that would have some power. And that became the early Catholic Church. And when you go back and you look at study Constantine and what they did in those wars.
Right.
So just 300 years after this brother, let's say, died, this corporation has become established up until today, right? Which has fought wars, it has branched off all kinds of divisions, with this Baptists and missionary Baptists and Lutherans and everything else. All this. So you have to scratch your head and go, wait a minute. Is this organized? It's chaotic as this is, starting just a couple hundred years after Jesus died. How can you logically look at that nonsense, that chaotic nonsense, especially in Europe, and look at yourselves as slaves with nothing? I mean, just property, just not even treated close to a human being, and think, yep, that's it. That's it. That's you know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you, man. I hear you. I try to stay unbiased, but at the same token, I don't know. I think because for me, when you just read, I mean, not even the fact that if in the Old Testament, if Joseph or any of these people were able to hide or not be noticed in a land that is full of black people, that just tells me that, they're black. And then, considering they were slaves in Egypt, it's just so many things that are parallel. So I guess what I'm getting to, not necessarily to get into this conversation or say that I disagree or agree, but what I'm getting to is I would like to ask you, do you think that whether it was the elders, the ancestors that were able to pass some stories down, or just common sense, or whatever the case may have been, do you think some of the people that our ancestors that were in these predicaments, considering the only thing they brought out of that was Jesus, who some refer to as Yahushua, do you think it's because they had the inclination, they thought, they believed, or they may have known he was black? Do you think that's why?
No, I don't think that. I think when you're isolated and you're born, you live and you die on a plantation, depending, of course, on where you are and who it is, you can't read and write. The drummers outlaws.
Right.
I think after that first generation out of Africa, you probably don't have a clue what's in the outside world. I mean, there's a fake thing about, imagine, 1788 and you're 16 years old and God knows what all happened to you. I mean, you don't know anything about Poland or the Prussian Empire or anything. All that is just like, this 50 miles away from the plantation, it's a whole new world for you. So I think that probably very clandestinely, in some slave communities, maybe our elders were able to preserve certain amounts of tradition. Mm-hmm. As I said earlier, yes. I think that in the Caribbean and in South America, they were able to preserve more tradition, with some of that syncretic stuff, like candomblé or voodoo or santeria, where it sort of became a melange with Christianity and in some cases with Catholicism. And I think that happened. because I don't think they were as brutal in terms of just trying to completely obliterate, what we brought from Africa. And I think that America was one of the more brutal places ever, for Black people, because we came out of it. The only thing we had left was the blues.
I'm happy you said that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't mean to cut you off. The reason why I said I'm happy you said that, because I have a question. So on Twitter, there's a gentleman who asked me a question. I respond, and what he's telling me is that blues. Now, I'm asking you this because you've been able to see the Black culture and the white culture in Europe as well as in America, and I'm sure other places, and you spoke of the Caribbean in Africa. So now, this gentleman is under how can I put this? I call it misinformation. I'm going to call it what I know it to be. Misinformation that the blues as an American art form, which he believes just only started in the South, and there's just so many pieces of misinformation here, was a knockoff or inspired or created by European gospel, and that the blacks on the slave blacks or slaves on plantations or sharecroppers got these European gospel songs, and this is how they created the blues. Could you please, if you will, give your perspective on that?
Well, sure. For one thing, everything that we encountered as slaves from wearing pants was something that the Europeans brought us. So you had people, fairly good as fiddlers, or in fact, people runaway slaves. And if they played a fiddle or something in a runaway notice, they put that in there. He loves to play the fiddle. He can sing, he can dance, he can everything. That was all part of it. So, to me, it's clear that if the only influence that you have comes, outside of what's going on in your community, it's coming from Europe, then that's, of course, how you get information to feed off of. So gospel music, and it wasn't, the Europeans never thought of themselves as singing gospel music. They had religious songs.
Right.
They didn't think of themselves that they were, the way the music evolved musically, structurally, okay, obviously was in some parts borrowed, that's a cultivation that you can't avoid in some parts borrowed. But what we did with it, okay, it's like, in terms of gospel, white folks rarely, shout Jesus. But as part of what was of the remnants of what we have left, when we did use the European forms, we sort of still use them within our traditions. Shouting, jumping up and down, clapping. You don't see people shouting and jumping down, clapping in the Catholic Church.
No, you don't.
The Lutheran Church. You know what I mean? So what we did was the remnants that we had left, and they hadn't taken away from us. Okay, those few little things, sure, they're transferred in the gospel. It's not a matter of I don't know if the tweeting person is trying to give Europeans credit for anything. If you imprison anybody for any length of time, you're going to take on some aspects of the people who imprisoned you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's just there's no way around that. And if you study them, you know what I'm saying? If you study them hard enough, you start learning their ways. Don't think, for instance, that the so-called house Negroes who were just like inanimate objects in the room weren't listening to and hearing what Malcolm was saying. That's what his wife and his kids or whatever he had to say. Okay?
Right.
So that's influence also. First, to go right back over to the shacks and and repeat the same thing, some version of it to their kids. Because that's part of it. That's how influence works until you break free. You know?
Right.
You can't avoid that.
Right, but they would. Yeah, I don't know, man. I understand being in the melting pot and having several things that inspire you. You know, just thinking about New Orleans and how Louisiana was, and that it was a free state for blacks for a long time. So one would say, and some believe, the blues. And some will tell you, based on their research and history, the blues actually started there, and it wasn't even a downtrodden music, and it was created by free blacks. That's why it's a little hard, just based on different things, it's hard to believe. I can see many influences coming from different places just out of the human experience. You go like everything you just described, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, you pick something up when you're living amongst a group of people or whatever. But I don't know. It sounds like he was giving them credit. Maybe he was just saying, by the way, but it's just really, then to think how the Moors established and civilized Europe, then so it would still be a situation where even it came from black people, no?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Moorish influence is phenomenal. Just look at Spain, and we see Cadiz, and we see some of those cities.
Right.
In the Iberian Peninsula. And just looking at let's say, well, me back to like I say, that actually there's some historians that claim actually a birth certificate for the blues, a birthplace. And I had that written down somewhere. But things evolve. They emerge. They don't just, it's not just cut and dry. This is the birth of the blues. This is Highway 61. This is the crossroads. This is where it all started. This is where Robert Johnson first running and all this kind of crazy stuff to come up with. And people don't realize, I think historians don't realize, that that's a big piece of earth that where slaves were in North America. So things evolve very differently in different places. It's just, it's like urban blues. Well, I mean, prior to the Great Migration, was there urban blues?
That's a good question.
But city life, and new kinds of instruments and amplification and totally different circumstances will create an urban environment that's going to be interpreted and responded to in a different way. And that's going to go city by city. In Detroit, it's going to be one way. In St. Louis, Chicago, another way. New Orleans, it's an amazing combination of feelings in New Orleans. So I think that problem that some go for me, it's not a problem. I think they're trying to solve the birthplace of the blues like it's a mathematical equation, and it doesn't work like that.
Understood and agreed, because there's just so many different things that's convoluted. Now, with that being said, it is evident, and I also said it earlier on in the introduction, you are a scholar, let alone a blues scholar. So, could you talk a little bit about the books and like you have a book, Recollection of a Blues Gypsy. You have the Great Black Music, the Art Assemble of Chicago Blues. You wrote for newspapers. I think you created a newspaper as well, right? And a publishing company. I mean, you've been busy, young man.
Well, that's something called the Chicago Blues Annual from 1989 to 1996, I think, 95. And that was to, of course, give musicians themselves control of the narrative, you know, and to have black writers and black poets, and you know, to represent ourselves, you know, and that hadn't been done before. But it also wasn't strictly blues. We had, you know, literature in there, black writers, black photographers, and painters, and we published certain volumes in English, Italian, Spanish, French, and a little bit in Yoruba.
I hear that.
You know, and as we did that, let's say we received a little bit of negative feedback, but a lot of positive feedback, you know. And this is a sad thing from you know, maybe if you were the black intellectual community. I mean, I had a lot of people involved, but the blues community itself, I don't think we actually had a lot of leadership. But the point is that my original idea for the Blues Annual was a resource guide for blues musicians. Because I found that blues musicians weren't really networking with each other. You know, money became so hard to make. People, you know, fighting each other for the same gigs, the same, you know, no paying gigs. So I provided a resource. I mean, I had radio stations, book agents around the world, places you can get in touch with, networking places to help people find work, so that we could develop some independence. You know, from a little cluster of blues business folks, a couple of record company owners and a couple of club owners and whatnot. And these blues artists, man, were at one point were very, very much tied to the small circle of white people who made their money from basically merely illiterate blues artists. And I'll tell you this, I created something with Lake Valley Wellington around 1991, 92, called the Chicago Blues Artists Coalition. Now, as you know, every arts organization in the world, you know, people get together, man, and organize themselves to be jazz artists or quilt weavers or we know the symphony orchestra people,
right?
You know, so the Blues Artists Coalition was perceived as a threat to the revenue of club owners and record companies. All of which, maybe out of 20 of them, let's say, maybe one was black in Chicago. So here's what happened, man. This is incredible. We started having meetings. Now, at the time, I was, you know, maybe 45 or 46 years old. So even young cats my age, okay, some of them came. I won't mention names, but you know, you can guess who was around at that time. One by one, you know, these cats started backing out of the coalition.
Oh man!
There was a spy in the room as well. Well, club owners were telling blues artists, established blues artists, if you belong to the Blues Artists Coalition, you will never work again.
Wow.
One of the head guys was Dr. Pellegrino of Kingston Mines nightclub. He told all of his artists, if you join the Blues Artists Coalition, you won't work again. But they were afraid. This is what I mean about containment and fear.
Right.
Yeah, I was never afraid of them. Lord knows I had no fear whatsoever. Many of them. But those guys, man, the old school of blues artists, man, were terrified. Oh man, I'm sorry, man. We have to, you know, I want to be a part of this, but so the doc said, you know, we can't be a part of the coalition. And so there you have this like a racist hatchet slashing away at the liberty of black blues artists.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
I wish Chicago nightclubs in it, and that's what you had. So you know, we can't. You know, we were defeated in that sense. I said, okay, there's nothing we can do. Now, of course, fast forward, you know, 35, 40 years, you could probably pull it off. You know, But I know blues artists. I'm not going to mention their names. I know blues artists in Chicago, man, who would not work with you if you had the name, the word black as part of your show.
Oh, my goodness.
I know blues artists in Chicago who listen to my songs. I got a song called "You Can't Send the Children to School," and in that line that goes after the people, and there's a line that goes after the people. You got to take care of yourself. Man, I wouldn't record that, but I think Africa might be offensive. Ooh, man. So this is what I mean by listening. You're afraid to say,
no, I understand you.
They're not. Hopefully, with all of everything that's going on now, it's sad that it takes George Floyd, to these kind of situations around Taylor for people to, to stand up proud and say what they feel. When your music should be a vehicle for what's going on in your life. And only a few blues artists now through the years have actually made those kinds of statements. Because it's not that, in other words, they don't put in their songs what they talk about in the barbershop with each other.
Right.
So when I came out with my ancestors, that was already like a no-no.
Wow.
Some of them put some African tunes on there. That was
wow. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, but that is that. And so that's, if you think about it, man, I mean, I don't look for attention or recognition for what I do. I'm working on a thing right now, and I'll send you a link to it. But I think if you do what you should be doing, and you really are trying to carry the torch for your culture, but also to write the way so the world can see things as they really are.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what we try to do with the publishing and with the music, man, is just to stop this separation, because what they do is they have these stratifications. This is blues, this is jazz, this is poetry, and now we're the ones on an academic level, like on a street level, who are in charge, in control of their own narrative. And that's what, if there never was, folk artists are usually the ones, who are carrying the torch of what's going on in the society.
That's right.
It could be Leonard Cohen, Peter Paul and Harry, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So blues artists, man. And now it's happening really to step up.
Oh, man, I just want to say we have to arrange a part 2, because there's so many things that I want you to expound upon. And it's just so ironic that you shared with us about this blues coalition, Chicago Blues Coalition, and how black blues musicians would run away, shy away if you have the word black in front of it. And we're in this current day, right? So that's about 20, 25 years ago, maybe a little more. In this current day and age, there's guys my age group, and I'm in the age group you were at when the story you shared was going on, and some other younger guys that are super duper musicians, and we're fighting this constant battle that, hey, because there's this thing that's always being said, it was started by blacks, it used to be black, but it's not anymore. Then there's no white, there's no black, it's just blue. All these things being said. And it's like, but we're here and we're still living this blues cultured experience. And for you to say that you went up against this, 20 years after one legend did, then 20 years after another, this is an ongoing battle that's still going on into 2020. And I'll give you the last word on that. How do you feel that this is still happening? How do you feel that people are saying, especially non-black enthusiasts, fans, audiences, and musicians, not all, right? Not all, and even some of those that say that aren't bad people, they just don't understand fully. But what do you feel? What do you think? Hearing that in this day and age, knowing you were fighting for this for quite some time.
Well, I think that I think sometimes, you know, within our communities, there's a disconnect, you know, from some aspects of our heritage. And I think that that's being worked on. I think I call it an internal issue that's being worked on. And I think that we have to be cautious as we move forward with all our cultures, because listen, there is a fundamental philosophy in that's a part of Eurocentrism. And I make it up, but I don't mean to be offensive either. But the philosophy is this: own everything.
Mm.
I don't print the newspapers, and I didn't start the wars or report the wars that go on since they started, since Jesus was around. 2,000 years of doing battle with each other over ownership.
Mm.
Own everything. Own people. Own each other. Own that hill over there. Own that prince. Own that duke. So as we emerge, you know, and we're still in the infancy of emergence from slavery. In the infancy of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, you know, you have civil rights leaders, man. John Lewis. People just, they were there, you know.
That is true.
That is brilliant. We're in the infancy of getting our act together. And part of that you have to be careful for is for it not to be appropriated and owned by the very people you're trying to liberate yourself from.
Mm.
Otherwise, you don't be allowed to wear a dashiki without getting permission or something.
I hear that.
You're not careful with it.
That's right.
But the idea is to own. You know, I'm just saying, man. If you look at history books, look, they've tried to figure it out. Where Southern Turkey guy, man, Danish philosopher, like Friedrich Nietzsche, man. They all look, Freud. They're all trying to figure out what's wrong with us. Yeah, while they was making people slaves, they were the ones in shrink, man, and trying to figure out, you know, why am I this way? Because of my mom there to be or what?
Mm.
So we didn't have that luxury.
Right.
You know? So, like I had a statement dude out the other day. He was saying, well, you know, some of these black women are so angry.
Mm.
I said, let me tell you something, sir. They're not nearly as angry as they should be. If your room had 50 different Roscoes in it, and you had these children, and your children don't know who their mama is, you know, you can't even love your own baby. You're a breeder.
Mm.
And you know, how everything gets transferred. You go, oh, no, she's got her colors, her eyes. He got hair just like his great grandmother. But you don't think that anger and that frustration, that abuse, it passes down through the generations, through the DNA. Black women should be so mad at how you run when they see them come.
I hear that.
They should be mad. They ain't mad enough as far as I'm concerned. How can you be anything but mad?
Well,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
That's what I meant by the entrapment of the religion.
Mm.
You know? That's what I meant by that, man. You know what I mean? Oh, well, just forgive them. There's only one reason somebody would teach you that. There's only one reason. Not for you to go to heaven. It's so you don't come back and get them.
That's
the only reason.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I hear you, sir. I hear you. Well, I definitely would like to ask you to come back so we can finish this conversation and go deeper into some of more music, some of the books you've done, also the experiences you've had based on, we just touched the surface, right? Because in the process of fighting for liberation, you made it very clear that there's some that. How did Harriet Tubman say, I would have freed more if they knew they were slaves? Some knew, but they needed the money, So I would like to touch more on that. However, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for joining us. And I'm going to link all of your social media to the broadcast. And I want to go out on this song by you. And I wasn't going to tell you I was going to play this. The irony of it is you mentioned it a few moments ago. So you know what song it is.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, sir.
Thank you, sir, man. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to speak with you, man.
It's a crying shame. It's a shame you can't send the little children to school. You know, they may get cut, shot, and beat up or something like that. Man, the teachers, they